So with the LS swapped accord, right now I am waiting on parts. See, I'm used to just making everything and as we go, whatever I need to do, I just make it. But for certain things, for example, the entire brake system, entire fuel system, we are just waiting on some parts. So I need to get better at making sure I'm ordering things ahead of time so that way I don't have so much downtime. But with this downtime, what I want to do is I want to make some floor mats, floor plates, something along those lines. So I got some aluminum. We're just gonna sit back, have a good time, and use this downtime wisely.
And now, you're watching From a Global Pandemic to a Global Protest in the Matter of a Week channel of YouTube. Welcome to 2020. Wait, welcome to Bodie Vision.
Hey, so what is up and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. So with my LS swapped accord, one thing that I had to do quite a while ago, if you haven't been keeping up with the series, is I have this entire frame section that goes back there. Now it's a mess in here, but it goes all the way back. So that entire frame, I had to put that to add some strength because this car, being a unibody, being front wheel drive, it was never meant for the amount of torque that's going to be on it. So I wanted to make sure it was plenty over engineered to be just fine. And also I ended up raising the floor right here to give me a little bit more room. But what that means is we have this lower, this higher, which is a little bit weird. So what I'm thinking is I just want to make a plate that's going to barely stick off a little bit right there, come all the way over, and then have a bigger drop down so that's a nice flat surface. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to take some measurements, transfer those measurements to the aluminum, eventually prep the aluminum, cut it, bend it. You know we got to do some dimple dies. Let's just get started. So as I measured this out, what I did first is I just measured the top, and that's going to be the entire face. But every single face, or the sides of the face, I had to consider the fact that I want it to fold down and then fold over. So I had to consider the height difference of the different floors, and that's what I noted right here. And then I had to give it an additional ½ of an inch for it to fold over, because that's what my bolts, screws, or rivets, or whatever I'm going to use is going to go through. So I measured out my face, and then I gave myself extra for it to fold over. If you want to try to do that after the fact, it's not going to work out. So you got to consider that as you're measuring and then as you're drawing it. Then I wrote down all my numbers, did the math, adding everything. So I'm going to have it drawn out as the face with the additional edges that I need to fold over. Alright, so here's what we have mapped out. Now I know it's kind of hard to see with the light and everything going on, but this main area, that's going to be the face of it, and then this is going to fold over. This is also going to fold over. This is going to be cut away completely. That's because we need a little bit of room for the fuel latch and for the trunk pop. Then this is going to be cut away. That's going to be folded down. That's going to be folded down. So these two angles are actually going to come together at a 90 straight through there. You'll see that more when we're getting there. And then also this, I just want to do a 1/4 inch fold here and a 1/4 inch fold all the way over there. And the reason why I want to do that is because I'm going to be putting dimple dies throughout this, so I need a little bit of room for that to come down. And I just want to do a 1/4 of an inch because this side, all the way from there straight down to there, that line up there marks about where that frame rail is running through. That's actually already higher, obviously, so I don't want to make that any higher. And then the way that I found this measurement, 3 3/8, was the difference plus a ½ of an inch for it to roll out. So it's a ½ of an inch for it to roll out. That's where my bolts are going to come through, and then it's going to come up 3 3/8 minus a ½ an inch. Then it's going to come up 3 3/8 minus a ½ of an inch. That's the difference that it is in the actual car. So that way when it's all said and done, it's going to lay nice and flat. So since I have a lot of cutting to do, this was throwing the sun right in my eyeballs, so I moved it and little spider, it's all good, okay. So as I'm cutting this, the only thing that I'm focusing on is I'm just making sure that Sharpie line is going right into my shear. If that's straight, everything else is gonna be straight. And then this cut, this needs to be cut all the way through because this is gonna be folded and this is gonna be folded. That needs to go away. And this cut can't end there. It needs to end all the way over there. All right, well that's it. Now what I gotta do, since I got everything marked off, I gotta take it to go get bent up. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is a nice right angle like that. Then I gotta pull it out, flip it upside down, and then do another right angle just like that. So that way as it's sitting in the car, it can have this plane and this plane running parallel. I could put a bolt through there. This standoff is that math that I just talked about just a moment ago. And on the high side, I'm just gonna do a little bit of a bend just so that way it can stand up just a little bit. And all these things have to be written down. There's no way you can keep all these numbers in your head. You guys are probably gonna know this. I know some of you may know this, but due to my inexperience of working with aluminum, put it in the bender. The first one worked all right, but it got to a point where it got real loose. It was a little bit more hard to bend than what I was expecting. And then this right here, as I was doing this bend, it just completely broke off. And I guess aluminum's not as pliable as steel. Some of you may know that, but I can admit that I don't have much experience doing this, but I can measure and I know that it's gonna turn out good. But since that's not gonna work, we're gonna have to switch gears a little bit. Since I got this one successfully, what I think I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut all these lines off and then I'll build a steel 90-degree bracket and I'll just pop some rivets on it. So that's what you gotta do. If it doesn't work, just switch gears and figure out what is going to work to ultimately make it work. If something goes wrong and you just give up, well then you wasted your time and your money. So what I did here is I actually mapped out the perimeter, making sure the perimeter was consistent on every single edge. And then I went ahead and I took my framing square and then I did a 45-degree angle one way, a 45-degree angle another way, and then I took a 2x4 on that 45-degree angle, went all the way this way, did the same thing all the way this way. Everywhere that it crosses over, I'm gonna go ahead and drill a 1/2-inch hole. So as I'm using my punch and flare dies, it is recommended to use it just with the ratchet by hand, because if you use an impact wrench and you go too fast, it can very easily crack the material. But what I'm doing is I just have my impact wrench and I have it on the slowest setting, so I'm just going really slowly, just letting it move the metal nice and slow so that way it's not gonna crack, and I'm just moving from one to another. If you go too fast, again, it is going to crack it. So if you are going to use an impact wrench, make sure you're using one that you can control the speed and run it as slow as possible. But if you aren't going to do a whole bunch of holes and if your material isn't pretty thick like this aluminum is, I would just recommend doing it by hand. Alright, so here we go. It is actually the next day now, and you can see this looks pretty cool. Pretty nice, high quality looking stuff. Now one thing is, I don't know if you saw a few clips back, well of course you did, I went ahead and I sanded this down. I finished off with a 220, and you want to do that before you go ahead and do the punching and flaring, so that way, so with one consistent surface, then it gets punched out. And then also yesterday when I went home, I did a little bit of research on why this was happening. And this aluminum, this is 0.063, and this is a 6061 T6 aluminum. I looked it up, did a little bit of research, and for bending, that's more likely to break. I needed to go with like a 3003 or a 5052 aluminum, and I'm saying these numbers like I knew that ahead of time, and I didn't know. I had to do a little bit of research. So I think what I'm gonna do, I like how this looks, I like all my numbers, I like everything about it. I would have liked it a lot more if I could have bent it how I wanted to bend it. So I think I'm gonna push that to the side and eventually get the correct aluminum. Now what we have right here, this is a new master cylinder, and this is a dual reservoir system. So one of them is going to be, this is for the front, that's for the rear. And the reason why we want to do that is because this system over here, it's only one reservoir, meaning if my brakes fail with this system, all of my brakes are going to completely fail. And that was actually brought to the attention to me by one of my subscribers. So when you guys comment, when you contribute to the build, you are actually contributing to the build. I didn't really realize that, but when somebody said it, they brought up a great point. I looked into it. I'm going to swap out that one for the new one, and it's gonna be all good. And I like that setup a lot better. Now it's not going through all these T's, and let's just go ahead and get it swapped out. So what we have right here, just this little guy, that's all we need. Now everything looks a little bit weird because this entire system was set up for a different way, and now we're having to make it work. So some of the fittings don't sit exactly flat, but it's all good. So the way that it's gonna work is this reservoir, the one in the back, that's for the front brakes. So it's gonna go from this fitting and then over to that T, and then it's gonna split to the front left, come up, over, and around to the front right. And then this one is just coming out of here, that's for the rear, that comes up and around to the proportion valve. And the reason why I wanted to do that was so that way I can adjust the pressure of the rear brakes. With all the weight distribution and everything being so crazy on this car, I wanted to have that. So this just runs down, around, into the car, all the way through there, and that goes into a T as well to the rear left side and the rear right side. So the only thing that's missing right now is that little one that I just made. So I guess we're gonna get this slapped in, then we'll go from there. Alrighty, so that's looking really good. Now the brake lines, that was the main thing preventing us from putting the motor back into the car for the final time. Well, hopefully for the final time. And now I still got to do fuel lines. I think I'm going to do fuel lines with the motor in the car because the fuel rail is where we're going back to. So it only makes sense to me to actually put it in there. And I'm going to be using all AN lines for that. And then also I wanted to go back and talk about this really quick. What I used to make this, my punch and flare die, that's actually a 1.5 inch punch and flare die. That's from Eastwood Fab. So those are super nice if you want to go ahead and check that out. On the next video, we will be putting the motor in the car for hopefully the final time, and I cannot wait for that. So make sure you subscribe to see that. And I think that's going to be it for this one, you guys. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you on the next one. I'm out.